Таджахао, ни хао, здравствуйте, привет, як там, hello, харате, salve, welcome.
Bus adventures, how was it, and why did I do it? Enjoy your freedom, enjoy your boredom. Life will change. Working on citations and references in class, how do you make this more interesting? And how easy would it be to create an app? Folks, this is episode number 57 of the Language Vlog Podcast. My name is Steven. Let's get to it. And here we go. Episode number 57 of the Language Vlog Podcast. My name is Steven, and this here is a podcast that I do, a weekly podcast that sort of tracks some of the things that I'm doing currently in Beijing, China. I live in Beijing, China. I've been here for this episode actually around now. It's either September 14th or September 16th. Marks 11 years in Beijing and in China. I've never lived anywhere else in China. I've never lived in any other city in China. I've traveled quite a bit through China. And thankfully and luckily, the first couple of years that I was here during the semester break, so the summer and the winter, I was able to backpack quite a bit of the country. Since then, I worked for a corporation for a while, a large company, and we did a lot of, I don't want to say business travel, because business travel implies there was negotiation, and there was no negotiation. I had to go do what the company wanted me to do. So it was work trips, I guess you would say. And as a result of all those work trips, I was able to see another part of China. I saw it more from the working traveler aspect rather than the backpackers perspective. Now, sadly, I didn't start this podcast until just last year, even though this podcast runs parallel to my YouTube channel, Steven's Language Vlog, wherein I post pictures and videos of the different goings-on here in Beijing and around China, and some of the different travels that I do. We just came back from Australia. Well, we went to Australia this past summer. I posted some videos about that. But the language vlog on YouTube sort of doubled as not just a here's what China looks like. It actually was kind of meant to be a track record of my own language progress, specifically for Mandarin Chinese. And every month I try to do at least one Mandarin Chinese progress check, a language check. I think I missed a couple months this year, but the idea was to demonstrate that it is possible to learn languages such as Mandarin Chinese while you're holding down a full-time job. Would I recommend this? It's a little bit difficult, especially Mandarin Chinese, and especially if you're not living in a place such as China or even Taiwan, where you're able to, even close by Chinatown in your home city, it gets difficult to not just keep the language front of mind, but also to use it repetitively on an ongoing basis. And by that, I mean being able to, like every day, I'm exposed to Chinese by way of just walking down the street, and also by way of these little conversations I'll have in elevators or on the bus, usually along the lines of where are you from, how long you been in China, what do you do, is like what's your job, sort of thing. Even practicing those three responses has, I guess, kind of helped. But if you were wondering like how I learned Mandarin Chinese, how I learned Chinese to be a little bit more proficient, as demonstrated in the videos on the YouTube channel, a lot of it came down to just studying the characters. That is, I should actually amend that a little bit. It was studying the characters, but it was also getting a job that was kind of dull and repetitive that allowed me the brain space to study the characters, which is also rather dull and repetitive. There are thousands of Chinese characters to learn. I followed the HSK books, the Hanyu Shuiping Kaoshi, that series of books that are tailored for foreign speakers, that is, people who are not born and raised in the Chinese culture and don't have that privilege or that ability to that experience of going through the Chinese education system, which teaches first pinyin for the first few years and then Chinese characters starting around grade 3 or something along those lines. But in following that system, the HSK, it goes from HSK 1 to HSK 6, or now it's HSK 9, but HSK 6, 5, 6, you're doing pretty well already. To go up those levels basically required me just to sit down and start writing the characters many times each. I did it 25 times each character in HSK 2, 3, 4. I stopped at HSK 5 because it became just so many characters to go through. But the other thing I did was during COVID, when we started working from home, I started hiring teachers through an app called Italki. And Italki, I've loved Italki. I still love Italki. It's not only is it available in China without a VPN or anything, it also it allows you to find teachers and like professional teachers and community teachers who will basically work for very cheap prices. And by cheap, I mean about $10 Canadian or 50 renminbi per half hour. And that was perfect. I actually found that a half-hour class is a phenomenal length of time for to study a language. It's enough to, be motivated to show up, but not long enough to be like, oh my goodness, I really don't want to go to class. Maybe I'll just call in sick, sort of thing. So say you're able to not only partake in these sort of shorter classes with professionals and community teachers, but you're able to buy packages of them, which then give you a discount. Now, I will leave my affiliate code for Italki in the show notes for this episode, and you can, if you click on that link, I'll get a small commission. You'll help out the podcast by doing so, but then you can also take a look through Italki and start finding your own teacher who can take you through the different speaking stages that you need to go through in whether it's Chinese, French, Russian, Ukrainian, or even English. Now, with that, I do have to mention, if you are looking for conversation practice, I actually offer this through my Buy Me a Coffee website. So buymeacoffee.com/StevensLanguageVlog. Under the shop section, you will find a conversation practice link. It's only $10. It's half hour, 40 minutes. It's kind of gentle in its sort of restrictions or its limitations. The reason being is because I want to replicate that experience of being on Italki. You might wonder, Stephen, why aren't you on Italki? It's because they no longer allow submissions or applications from Chinese, Russian, English, or French or Spanish teachers. So they have enough teachers already on the platform that they've stopped allowing applications. So in my own little way of contributing to this practice, what I think is a very good practice, this cheap conversation practice, for the price of a couple of coffees, a beer maybe, $10. We'll have a 30-minute conversation. We'll go through any topic that you like, practice any sort of pronunciation, vocabulary items, even a little bit of guidance if that's what you're looking for. Now, this is not a class. I don't want you to mistake it for being a class. It's not like I'm going to prepare any materials for it, nor should you really expect any like major analysis of your language, which I can do on a separate occasion. But for the $10 conversation practice, literally, we meet online, Zoom, Google Meet, and we just talk. We just practice. So if that's something that you're interested in, head over to buymeacoffee.com, Stevens Language Vlog, and you'll find the link there. Now, what's this about bus adventures? Well, in this past week's newsletter, which if you haven't signed up for, it is free and it's available for everybody. I send it out about once a week, and it also sort of parallels the YouTube channel as well. But lately I've been adding some extra things in there as well, notably like links to documents that I'm finding very useful or that other language learners might find very, very useful as well. But I'm also foreshadowing some of the videos that we're working on. The next video that I have to release is actually this bus trip that I took from Changping over to Shuangjing. Now, Changping is, I guess it's not part of the university district, but it is the spillover area. By that, I mean, Haidian is the big university area in Beijing. It takes up the whole western part of the city. North of that is a district called Changping, and Changping is where I currently live or reside. It's where the hotel is and where the university is. Now, I've been living in a place called Shuangjing, which is in the southeastern part of Beijing. I was living there working from home for a very long time, and it was just this year that I switched jobs. I went from a corporate job into a university job once again. This was sort of in an effort to change things up and see if I really enjoyed being back in the classroom. And if you've listened to any other previous episodes, you might already know this, but a lot of the language learning that I see and am experiencing, I'm kind of going, this should be automated. We'll deal with that another time. Even later on in this episode, I'll talk a little bit about developing applications specifically for language learning. But this past weekend, so one of the things I used to do between Shuangjing and Changping is I used to take the cab. And this was, I used to do this twice a week, once on Saturday morning to return to Shuangjing, and then once again, usually Sunday night or Monday morning to get back to Changping for the work week. Now, this past semester, I was kind of thinking, do I really enjoy taking the cab very much? Not only does it cost a lot, relatively speaking, 100 renminbi, 120 renminbi, which is about $20, $25 Canadian, but times two. So it's about 250 renminbi each and every week that I'm making this journey. Last semester, I was doing this quite a bit, a cab on the way down and a cab on the way back. But that was because when I was taking the cab, taking the cab back, actually going from Shuangjing to Changping was the easiest thing to do because I would bring a lot of stuff with me from Shuangjing, whether it was like food that I could bring with me, clothes, etc. Now, as the weather got warmer, I didn't need as much stuff, so I was able to cut down on the amount of things that I was transporting back and forth. The other thing, though, with taking the cab, in my mind, and probably one of the best reasons for taking the cab, was that I could be productive. And contrast that with being on public transport, and I think this goes almost without saying, if you were to take any form of public transport, buses or subways, how much do you see people actually getting done on their trip? Think about, what are they doing? Well, they're probably reading books. They might be playing a game, listening to a podcast, or more than likely, they're sleeping. But in a cab, the idea is that I could sit in the back of the cab, edit videos, shoot videos, make calls if I needed to, and or simply do some grading, which I did do as the essays came in last semester. However, there were a few challenges along the way, a few bumps, I guess you could say, in that not only was the car ride itself could be bumpy, and or the drivers would drive too fast or be go back and forth, braking, accelerating. So it wasn't always a very comfortable ride, conducive to getting things done. Not only that, editing video, I did get some videos done in the back of the cab, but not that many, not as many as you'd kind of want to justify the cost of spending 100 renminbi to have a car ride. But that got me thinking, but what if I took the bus or even the subway? Now, these two other forms of transportation, subway, you know how long it's going to take you. Bus, it could take you a long time. It could take you a short time. Depends on how the traffic is that day. What it would do, though, it would certainly be, first of all, cheaper. Second of all, it'd be a little bit more visually interesting as well. Taking the bus would be much more visually interesting than taking the subway. But it certainly wouldn't be as, stress-free as taking the cab. The cab is door to door. The one other thing that I had to consider with taking the cab and then taking the bus is that not just the cost of the fare itself, but there was also late fees and the driver themselves. Now, I don't want to put people off from taking the cab, but the way that it works here, China has a very similar system to the Uber system in North America and in Europe, where basically anyone can be a cab driver. And that's good. It means that people can do this job. Low barrier of entry. The problem is that sometimes you get drivers who know how to drive or understand that there is a paying customer in the back seat who doesn't want to be tossed around. But then there's also drivers who take it as a time to make a phone call that, maybe they feel they need to make a call at that time and scream at the person on the other side of that phone call. And if you're wondering, does this actually happen? Well, there have been a few times where the cab driver has made phone calls during the ride, which normally I don't have a problem with. Like, it's not a big deal. You have business to do, you have things to do. Hey, my Chinese is only hai ke yi, it's only okay. And maybe they don't want to make conversation with me. Maybe they don't want to deal with my terrible Chinese. Fine, I get it. But taking that opportunity to make a phone call that gets a little bit heated or emotional, that to me was kind of like, wow, maybe taking the bus or the subway isn't such a bad idea. But not only that, there was another problem with taking the cab that kind of became more of an annoyance and a very costly annoyance. And you could argue that is completely my fault because I wasn't paying attention to it, but because I didn't think I had to pay attention to it. And that is the late service charge. Now you might wonder, okay, late service charge, nothing really out of the ordinary. What were you late in doing? I was late in paying. Okay, well, all right, that makes sense. If you delay paying the fee, then yes, you should be charged interest. My issue was that there was a late fee for the extra fee. So I prepaid, get to the place, get to the hotel, get to Shuangjing, and then I didn't check the app. Maybe I should have. Maybe I didn't know that I had to check the app for any extra fees that were being incurred. And it wasn't until I went to go order another cab that I would find out that there was not only just an extra fee, but that there was a late fee for not paying the extra fee on time. WTF? Why? First of all, what's the extra charge? And second of all, why am I being charged a late fee for something that I already prepaid? Now, I don't really know. I kind of sent some messages to Meituan telling them, can you explain this? Like, why is this going on? Honestly, I don't even really care. The fact that I was prepaying a fee, but then I'm finding out that there's an extra fee and then there's a late fee for the extra fee. This kind of bothered me. And I was sitting there going, okay, well, do I really need to take the cab? Or could I take the bus? Could I take the subway? I don't really like taking the subway. It's a bit crowded. It's very crowded, but that also could be said about the bus. Now, in saying that, I was thinking, which would I rather do? Would I rather take the bus, which is out in the open, or would I rather take the subway, which is kind of enclosed? And so that got me kind of thinking, you know what? Maybe I'll try taking the bus. And so all that being said and done, I was like, okay, well, what about this semester? What if I just slowed down a little bit and instead of rushing to places with the cab and sitting in the back there, paying this fee and the late fee and then the late fee, etc. What if I just took the bus? So I was like, okay, this past weekend, I decided to do a trial run. What would it be like to take the bus? Now, lucky for you, I did document this. I did video record quite a bit of it. I'm going to post this probably up later on in the week. And it's just a small look at what it's like to take the bus here in Beijing. I will say one fear that I have of the bus, there's actually two fears of the bus. Number one, the payment. Now, luckily, over the years, China has unified and standardized its payment systems, largely through WeChat and Alipay. So this has made things a lot easier. This doesn't always work because although it works in Beijing, it wasn't, I think, until just last year, 2 years ago, that I think all of the cities have agreed that you can pay through Alipay. Before that, you needed to have a specific transport card for each and every city transportation system that you wanted to take. But that seems to have been fixed and solved. So now you can use Alipay or WeChat to use a QR code to pay for public transport around the country. The second fear with the public transport system, not so much with the subway system, but definitely with the bus system, is that if you aren't ready to disembark by the time you get to your stop, then chances are the bus will leave. And when you realize the mistake, you are going to be so far away from where you're supposed to be. Not only that, trying to cross the road to catch the bus to where you came from or where you need to be. This was one thing that I was concerned about happening. And now this would have been a bit more of an issue if I wasn't able to speak Chinese very much, or if I didn't have Alipay and WeChat and have some money in the bank so I could pay for cabs and stuff like that. So basically there was a safety net. I guess the issue was that that safety net has only developed over the last few years. the fear that I had with taking the bus is very much rooted in my early years of traveling through China, where I just wasn't able to speak the language very well. Understanding it was kind of difficult. The transport cards were different, and I couldn't read Chinese as well as I do now. So when they said what the bus stop was, there was no way for me to verify visually what the bus stop name was. Even like in some places, they don't announce it in English. Nowadays, I think they've sort of standardized it a lot more in speaking it both in Chinese and in English, but that's not always the case, especially outside of some of the bigger cities. All that being said and done, got it done, took the bus to Shuangjing, and then from Shuangjing back to Changping on Sunday night. So Chenggang on that one, success has been made, success has been had, and I'm thinking, the other thing about taking the bus is that it allows me to leave whenever I want. See, if you order a cab, you have to wait for the cab, and then you have to leave once the cab arrives. But with the bus, as long as you leave within their sort of operating hours, you can go whenever you want. They're always running every 5, 10, 20 minutes. And again, since it's not so hot outside, it's kind of pleasant to take a walk and to wait for a bus. It's not too cold just yet, and it's certainly not as hot as it was a month ago. What about you? Which do you prefer? And if you were in a new city, which would you rather take? Bus, like overland travel, subway, or would you rather just take a cab and get to where you need to go? Let me know. I'd be interested in finding out. Next up, enjoy your freedom and enjoy your boredom because life goes fast. This is actually related to what we're working on in class right now, citations and referencing. And I was kind of thinking, like, this semester, we're dealing with argumentative essays. The students are meant to pick a side of an argument. I think the current topic is homework should be banned or something along those lines. And they're supposed to argue one side or the other. Now, I'm not sure if they're allowed to argue against homework being banned or if they have to argue for homework being banned. Either way, the idea is to create an argumentative essay. Not only that, they have to use references or sources, resources. And much of I guess we're in week 3 already much of the last week and a half has been dealing with in-text citations. And not just in-text citations, but reference lists. Now, if you've ever been to university before and had to write an essay, no doubt you're kind of like, oh yeah, I see it. And you probably even understand the importance of it. But now, imagine you were doing this in a second language and your punctuation isn't the greatest in the second language on the best of days. And now you have to create this reference list that has even more wacky punctuation. And this didn't really strike me until I was literally teaching this, going through this chapter of the workbook, going, wow, this is horribly dry. I mean, how do you make this at all interesting? I was thinking actually of the CELTA course that I took 11 years ago before I came to China. That is the Certificate for English Language Teaching of or for Adults. That is sort of your base entry-level ESL certification that gets you in the door for a lot of jobs. But that's the teaching aspect. And that deals very much with the communicative approach of teaching English and is very much geared towards smaller classrooms, 12, maybe 18 students, not 40 plus class sizes, and certainly not writing classes or referencing classes. That is, when like university level tuition or university level seminars, a lot of it is just sitting down and listening and going through the workbooks. So one of the things that the CELTA teaches you is how to be a little bit more active and creating games and eliciting, that is, drawing out the answer from your students. The problem is the CELTA course is often made up of a bunch of volunteers. That is, the students that, they're not volunteers. They pay a small fee. The students that are in the guinea pigs, the trial students at the CELTA course pay a small fee, and as a result, they get a discounted fee to be sort of the trial and error students that the teachers have to practice on. But at the university level, you don't have that same sort of leeway. the students at the university level are expecting a certain type of tuition. Not only that, it's part of their degree. So there's a little bit more at stake if they do understand or if they misunderstand something. The CELTA lends itself more towards not just the communicative approach, but towards the TPRS, the Total Physical Response System of teaching. And that is like you get the students up, you get them moving around, talking to each other, etc. That's all great and good for speaking and listening. But university, they have to write essays and they have to do citations, in-text citations. And then with those in-text citations, they have to create reference lists. This isn't something that you get students up and moving around about. Oh, okay, maybe you can. Maybe a better teacher could do this. I'm thinking it certainly would be interesting. And I know a few teachers who would actually be able to pull this off. I'm not one of them. And this actually kind of bothers me because I'm sitting there, I see these students slowly nodding off. And I'm like, I understand, but like, what else can I do? How else do you instruct the necessity and the structure, the correct structure of an in-text citation? You need the brackets, you need the name, you need the year, and you need the page number. And then after that, if you have any in-text citations, that means you need a reference list after. If you're an English speaker, you could parse that information pretty quickly. But if you're completely new to referencing and you've never seen this before, because the Chinese high school system doesn't teach this, why should it? They may have seen it in Chinese before, but their punctuation is a little bit different. So now you have these names, these foreign family names that you've never seen before. You have capital letters that have no periods after them. So like, what does that stand for? And then today we were going through, there's two types, books and journals. Books was easy enough, but then the journal references. How do you start piecing together a journal reference? Not only that, how do you fix it, or how do you know what looks right and what looks not right? And I think more importantly, which is what the students were wondering and what I was kind of wondering, how exact does the punctuation have to be in a reference list item in order for it to attain or achieve full marks? I'm not sure just yet. And I don't think there's any surprise in this that a few of the students are kind of nodding off or looking at me or looking at the book going, what is this all about? And I've been a big proponent of AI and automation and all that stuff. I mean, I love using ChatGPT and Claude Pro and all these technologies. The problem is that there still comes a point when you have to learn to identify what looks right and to be able to parse that information. Because the reference list isn't just an academic requirement for aesthetic purposes. The numbers and all of the letters and information that's provided in a reference list item is, I would say, very important, especially nowadays, given that tools like Perplexity, ChatGPT, Claude Pro, Google Gemini, they can create these reference items and they can look very good. They can look very convincing, but they might be fake. And if you never tried this before, you can ask ChatGPT or Claude or whatever it is to create an essay for you with in-text citations and reference lists. This is not impossible. If you're not just going to copy your essay from the internet, you can get ChatGPT to write it for you anyway. But looking at that, the whole idea of the reference list and the idea that this whole academic process of the in-text citations, providing actual support details and facts and statistics from other people, other sources, goes back to being able to substantiate your claims, to prove that you're not just full of it, that your claims are actually valid and other people can support you with this, or that you can support your argument with data that other people have found before you. So in that sense, being able to read a reference list item is kind of a good skill to have, even if you aren't going to continue on in academia, even if you're not going to continue on in the university system. Being able to look at a reference item, say, look at who the authors are, when the thing was published, what the title of the article was, where it was published, and not only that, which volume or year, which issue it was, and where and what pages it was as well. And all this stuff, it seems kind of like, oh, why do we need to know this? But this is actually a good skill to have, a good ability to be able to read a reference item so that you can go check that item yourself and actually look it up. Like, what does this person actually say? This is also important because one of the things I told the students about or to write down in their books was context, context. And this came back to this whole idea of if you're going to use someone else's words or ideas, you can't take them out of context. So if you're citing someone else's book or a journal article, you can't just take whatever you want and put it into your essay. It actually has to make sense. There has to be context, and there's context within your essay, and there's context within the other person's essay, book, or journal, or whatever the case may be, whatever the source is. And by providing the in-text citation and the reference list, that enables someone else to check the context of what that source is. So if you're just taking random numbers, 75% of students think homework should be banned. Well, but in what situation did they say that homework should be banned? As someone looking at the in-text citation or the reference list item, they could then go check your sources, which is what it's all about. Regardless of whether or not they actually like this or if they're getting it right, my admiration for these students continues because not only are they learning this important skill, but they are learning it in a second language. So they're learning it in English. They're listening to me go on in English and broken Chinese. I try not to speak too much in Chinese. To be honest, my academic Chinese is pretty deplorable, pretty bad. If they don't know what I mean by a comma or a colon, then I certainly don't know how to say those words in Chinese. I know Zhuhao, that's the only one. I think that's period. The other ones, no idea. So in that sense, we're kind of on the same ground in that we're speaking languages or speaking words that we don't really know and that we don't really understand cross-culturally. I mean, we do understand what they are, we just don't know what the words are. All that being said and done, task 1, argumentative essay, is getting that done. Task 2, learning how to do in-text citations, referencing your sources, and creating that reference list at the end of your essay. It's been a while since I've had to do that. I kind of actually tried to tell the students this. The modern reference list is the modern web link. That's it. I mean, when you click on a link, think of that as a reference. But here on paper, you have to give all the information because you don't have the hyperlinks built into the essays. I don't think they cared. I'm not sure if that one really hit. I think they're kind of like, yeah, but then why do we have to do this thing? Anyway, as I mentioned before, my admiration continues because I was also kind of thinking like, if this was me and I was taking a Chinese class, learning the Chinese method of referencing, would I be able to do it? Would I understand all the words that they're using? Or at this point, given that I've studied up into HSK 5, I could start piecing things together, and I should be expected to piece things together and understand them. I don't know. Have you ever had to study something you already know, in a new language? And what did you not know that you then found out? I'd be interested in hearing. And finally, I've mentioned this before, creating apps, automation, AI, and all this stuff. This is actually something, I mentioned this in the newsletter this past weekend, that something I'm looking into and working on myself. I've seen a few different AI apps come out recently. I mentioned one a couple weeks ago, Cathoven AI. There's another one, Stimular.ai. And I think there might be a third one. Well, even something like Pearson, and I think even TOEFL does something along these lines of having an AI or a computerized language test that can help or at least do the basics of grading and assessment. However, in my own experience in using these different tools, I can say they are nowhere near taking over human jobs just yet. Yes, I know. I have talked about using AI and automation for my YouTube channel. I've also made YouTube shorts about this topic before, whether or not the AI agents are going to take over. And I think the general consensus is that no, they're not going to. The hype is far more, crazy compared to the reality. The reality of it is that these AI bots, whether it's a chat bot, whether it's a website, an application, whatever it is, anything driven by ChatGPT, Claude, Google Gemini, DeepSeek, Doubao, which is a new LLM here in China, it's not going to take over human jobs just yet. They hallucinate, they get things wrong, they misinterpret, and unlike a human interpreter or a human assessor, they don't learn. So a human can ask for a rephrase, like, what do you mean by that? Sorry, could you say that one more time? The AI can't do this. So if you say something to the AI, it just goes with it. And not only does it go with it, you're never really wrong with AI. You're always right. Whereas a human will probably challenge you a little bit, even if it's in a professional setting, such as a university classroom or even the IELTS test. Now, all that being said and done, as I mentioned in the newsletter this past week, I am kind of working on my own type of application. Now, this is not something that is going to be large scale, rolled out to massive production standards. No. All this is going to be is an add-on or a value add-on to, I don't know, my membership program, which you can join via the Buy Me a Coffee website. The thing is about these apps, these vibe-coded apps, is that they are not production ready. They're usually prototypes. And I was listening to another podcast just today that this guy is very experienced in developing SaaS applications, that is, software as a service applications. And it was an hour-long podcast. He just went through a litany of problems that he had, not just developing the prototypes, but in launching applications that were supposed to be sort of standalone web apps, web development apps. And he was saying, these things aren't, if you are a solo creator and you buy into this idea that you're going to create the next big viral web app with these vibe code tools, Replit, Claude Pro, ChatGPT, Lovable, Bolt, it's not going to happen. Least of all, because there are a lot of hackers out there who are just looking for people who have created an app with a database that haven't secured it properly. And if there's one thing that will break your app faster than anything else, it's having an insecure connection. Never mind login issues, OAuth, or using Google or Facebook to log in. If you have a database of information, you have to start taking care of it. You have to start taking precautions to preserve and to save that information in a way that it cannot be breached or stolen by someone else. It was a very good episode, and it kind of reminded me, if you have these ideas, it's a good idea to try out these different applications. Replit, Bolt, Lovable. I even tried them out. I pay for a subscription with Replit. The idea was actually to create, I guess, how would I say it? If not a digital mind, then a grand or a glorified chatbot that I could then plug in all of the information that I create from these podcasts, my YouTube videos, and have that all at the ready for someone who would visit my website or join the membership program or something along those lines. But the idea of creating the next Angry Birds or Counter-Strike 2 using vibe coding tools, not going to happen. Not only that, I was asking ChatGPT and Claude Pro how to build out the Katoven.ai application. And they said, yeah, you could do it. It's possible. It's just that it would require a lot of work. And if you're a one-person team, that's one thing. But it's not just the one-person team aspect. It's who's going to maintain it. Do you want your job to become looking after this application that inevitably will have problems, or that you might want to even upgrade at some point, that is, add in new features? And this kind of made me laugh a little bit and rethink my whole approach to this automation, in that it's a great idea to think that I could automate my job. But if I could automate my job, why hasn't the university already done it? The point being is that if I think I can somehow make my job, make myself redundant in my own work, then chances are the bigger fish have already tried to do this, but they haven't. And why? Well, I think it comes down to security, number one, and then number two, maintenance costs. So creating a secure environment, what's easier, paying some foreigner to come in and access a spreadsheet on OneDrive, or having an app that can be hacked by just about anybody in the world if they were so looking to do so? Not only that, have a developer maintain the app and plug all the fixes and everything like that, all the bugs, or simply pay a teacher, a human, to show up to class and use a paper workbook, or even, give them a PDF file. That's fine too. But I think it comes down to cost and security. The technology, I mean, yes, it's in the beginning stages. Certainly, I have thought this entire semester, this last year, I'm like, these things should be automated. But the clear and simple answer is that yes, it could be automated, but should it? And would it be as good? I don't know. Kind of thinking maybe my whole plan, my whole idea of creating a new app might have to be tamed a little bit. Now, I'm not discouraged because, again, what I was thinking was building out sort of a second brain, a digital mind, or even an assistant helper, an assistant assessor that people could submit their written or speaking feedback or written and spoken audio files to this bot. It would do an initial assessment, but then we can create a database of the information that they give. That is, like, where they're making the mistakes. We can start charting out a roadmap. We can integrate this into a full-fledged, sort of a customized course, a customized road path to their intended target. So that's what I'm looking to do. Not easy, but is possible. And that can certainly be something that would be deployed on a small scale. Again, not production, not huge scale. We're talking memberships only, members only sort of thing. You pay for it that way. If it breaks, the sort of the damage is limited on who it can affect. And not only that, the security is the big one. And this gets me thinking about, it's easy to say that you're going to create an app with these vibe coding apps. The problem is, like, if you're cheaping out on security, that is a bad idea. So if there's one place that I think you should actually be spending money on, it's in ensuring that your application is safe, which adds to the cost, which might also add to the membership fee. But this is something that we can work on, and something that I'm working on going forward is creating a second Steve, a second Steve assessor who can do the initial or the preliminary sort of research, even if it's just a chatbot that you can check in on, whether it's through a website or a link or something like that, where you just ask it, hey, how would I attain an IELTS band 7.5, an IELTS band 8, IELTS band 7, or how do I create? I was even thinking of programming a bot for my university students. So if they had any questions, and instead of adding me on WeChat, they could just go to a link and then ask the question there, and I'd have all of the information already there. I thought that'd be a good idea. No personal information needed. It's all pretty much public domain anyway. I mean, it's common knowledge. How to write an essay, how to do references, that's not a big deal. It's more that the workbook that the university created, that's proprietary. I get that. But even still, how do you do a reference? How do you write an in-text citation? When do you need an in-text citation? These questions could be generated. These ones could be responded to by a chatbot. Maybe that's my project for this semester. What do you think? It'd be kind of neat, wouldn't it? Would you want to talk to a digital Steve? Interesting. All right, we'll leave it there. Thank you very much for listening. I appreciate it. So we'll close episode number 57 of the Language Log podcast. And I've mentioned a couple times already, if you haven't done so already, there is a membership program that you can access through buymeacoffee.com/StevensLanguageLog. That is a membership program that includes MP3s, transcripts, and forthcoming app access, but also includes other little language learning materials that I have found useful in my own language studies and might help you as well in yours. There's also the newsletter, free every week. I try to send that out. You can sign up for that. Link is in the show notes for this episode. And finally, folks, if you have any comments, concerns, questions, or suggestions, please do get in touch either through email, send me a message on one of the socials, or head on over to the YouTube channel and drop a comment under one of the videos, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. Thanks again, folks. We'll do this again. Sorry about the audio issues for this episode. Next week, I'll remember to do some house cleaning on my phone before recording. Thanks again. We'll do this again. Have a good one. Bye-bye.